Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Q&A live stream. I'm Mario Blandini at IX. I'm very happy to be here today on a live Q&A that we're doing with a special guest host. Joining me for the discussion and primarily starring is Morgan Littlewood, our Senior Vice President of Product Management. How are you doing today, Morgan? I'm
great, Mario.
Awesome. And we're especially happy to be giving the helm of our live stream channel to a friend of IX and someone who knows a lot about TrueNAS, Robbie Andrews. How are you doing today, Robbie?
Hello, I'm good. What I can say, it's a late afternoon here in the UK. Everyone's on different time zones, aren't they? Yep, here we are. We're doing ourselves a lovely Q&A today. I don't know if I've got control now. Let's see if I've got control of your YouTube and what I can do with it. Yep. I mean, today I was really hoping to talk to some experts here at IX about TrueNAS. I mean, again, I've talked about NAS for a very long time on my own channel, my own website, etc., but lots and lots of people either on the fence about buying their own server or people that are considering kind of moving away from their existing NAS, look at TrueNAS. It's kind of this silent but ever-present platform that exists in the world of data storage and private server use. So there's so many questions about people that have not utilized TrueNAS in, or even, free NAS before it and all the different myriad of forms that it's now beginning to take in scale and more. So hopefully you guys are going to be able to answer my questions today. I mean, Morgan, are you ready to answer some of my audience's questions? There's a lot of them.
I'll try very hard, Robbie. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. So should we get the ball rolling? I think let's go for it. Right. I mean, again, probably one of the most common questions that I've been asked by the audience is generally about TrueNAS itself. And it's about why are the hardware requirements for TrueNAS higher than similar systems that would run ext4 and run on Linux? Why are they higher? What?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So first of all, TrueNAS has chosen ZFS as its base file system. And so ZFS is clearly requires more resources. It provides more power. But it effectively, TrueNAS is optimized for performance and reliability. We don't want to cut corners. And you can run on less cores and less RAM, but performance will suffer. And we don't recommend that. We want to make sure the user experience is always great.
So performance is the focus there. I'll be honest, because TrueNAS has that reputation of just being this beefy, kind of all-encompassing performance platform there. So I guess, again, you can't really have that without the horsepower.
Sure. So an example is that with ZFS, unlike ext4, you get built-in snapshots because it's a copy on write file system. And that is not free. There are some resources that are required for that, but that's the trade-off we decided to make sure that everything was always fully functional and fully performing.
I mean, even I'd utilize some of the when FreeNAS was first, when it was starting to emerge. It's several years ago that I first experimented it with myself, and then there was a big old gap for a long period of time before I started playing with one of your systems here. So I saw just this incredible evolution since I last looked at it. And even when I have looked at ZFS on, say, a QNAP platform a while ago, it still didn't have some of those features that you're talking about there. So again, that's great. That's obviously something you're going to need the hardware for. That leads me straight on to question number 2. Let's go straight on with that. And again, it continues on a similar vein. Why are when you look at a lot of Synology and QNAP systems, the RAM and CPU requirements there for a lot of their day-to-day NASs are much lower. They're looking at Celerons and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So again, when we look at likewise systems that have got the CPU and RAM requirements there, within your IX or even those beefier TrueNAS systems, why does ZFS need so much more in that context?
Mm-hmm. You can run effectively TrueNAS on a Celeron type processor. There's no problem with that. The question is, do we recommend it, or do we recommend a slightly higher system? Celerons effectively don't have ECC RAM, so that means there's no error correction in them. So we generally recommend a more professional grade system that's going to be more trouble-free. Why is there slightly more memory need? Effectively, TrueNAS is really built as a professional grade system. It can run on any hardware, so that means it has all the drivers, etc., for the OS, and it's got a full OS there for various functions. So, yep, there are more resources required, but we think that the value that you get out of that is higher.
Excellent stuff. I mean, again, I think a lot of users, even when they've looked at buying a brand new off-the-shelf NAS, would probably think, oh, this too bad, there's no way it's going to run ZFS. But I think a lot of users, when they start looking at those mid-range systems, they hope it will run ZFS. And even some of the ones that arrive with 8 gig of memory, they've got ZFS on them, but they've got such limited software things removed from the services. I think, again, that expectation is a big part of that. Anyway, question number 3. This one was, again, direct message from Twitter, this one. And again, this, I think, was one of the cornerstones for me of why I asked you guys if we could run this Q&A. And it's in light of ransomware. I mean, ransomware's been around since the 90s, I believe, maybe even earlier than that. But in the last 6 months, it has been a deluge. And again, QNAP, Asustor, and TerraMaster, it's no secret, they have been targeted within the last 6-7 months. So in light of that recent spate of attacks, is there any reason why a user considering a TrueNAS setup, whether that's an IX or just general TrueNAS build, is going to be less susceptible to ransomware?
Sure. It's a great question. Ransomware is on everyone's mind. There are sort of 2 things about systems in terms of ransomware. There's one is, how do you break into them? And you tend to find that consumer grade systems, they try and build the apps into the software. And so effectively, if you can break in through an app, you can break into the host OS, and from there you've got control of the system. With TrueNAS, we don't do that. We make sure that apps and VMs are all cleanly separated from the host OS, and so it's much harder to break into. And then the second thing is, how do you make sure that you're less likely to lose data? And that's where TrueNAS, using ZFS, uses snapshots, etc., to make sure that you can actually recover your data if someone does attack it and starts putting corrupting files or encrypting files on your system. So they're the techniques we use, but the key thing is that we use the best-in-class or enterprise-grade approach of keeping apps separate from the host OS and the file systems.
I'll say, when I was again, coming soon, self-plug here, my TrueNAS review should hopefully be out there in the next week or so. But one of the earlier things that really impressed me by it was the jail system. And I know that's been around for a long time, but that degree of separation, because, again, without doubling down on this, one particular element of recent ransomware attacks came down to an app with a vulnerability that opened the door to everything else. So again, that finding out these, when I was kind of digging into the TrueNAS platform more and more, this was happening at exactly the same time. So those 2 just perfectly learnt together there. Anyway, next question. If TrueNAS, previously FreeNAS, is free and can be put on pretty much any custom system, if I want to go out and build one, why would I spend more on one of your IX systems?
Sorry about my phone there.
No worries, no.
The answer is that, if you've got the skills and you want to go build your own system, hey, we say go for it. We like the community. We want them to experiment. We want them to try new things and optimize things. So that's the sort of difference between us and the Synologies and QNAPs. We make it possible. We want to encourage people to reuse old hardware. You can actually even reuse an old QNAP box in some cases and put TrueNAS on those systems. However, if you're, you're a professional, or you've got a sort of important task to do, so you're a photographer, or you're running some other small business, and you want to store your data, and you've got other things you want to do with your time, then we want to make sure you've got available a turnkey system that you can just plug into the power, plug in the drives, and away you go. So that's what the TrueNAS Minis are about. So we want to service both parts of the market and make it easy for people to use TrueNAS.
Originally, I learned obviously more about FreeNAS and TrueNAS before I knew about IX systems. So this idea, you had the free option, community-based, and you had your off-your-shelf kind of turnkey solutions from Synology, QNAP, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't know about this nice little tier in the middle. And I think a lot more people do than me. I'm not that clever, but I do quite like that exists there in the middle, because I think a lot of businesses like the idea of a TrueNAS system. But as you say, the idea of having to go down there and learn the skill set and understand the hardware architecture. So it's really good that exists. Next question, directly from...
the other thing I think you'll see when you're reviewing the Mini X is that we've actually, Mini X Plus in this case, is that we've actually done a lot to optimize the hardware just to make sure that for that package, it's very good. So what you'll find is it's very quiet. For example, we've really optimized the airflow and the quietness of the fans, and you've got 10 gig built into the system, etc. So doing all those things yourselves with standard hardware is complicated, and I think we can do a better job for the people who really want a quality product for those types of systems.
Yeah, just going on a quick tangent, actually, before I get to my question. During my review, I kind of tried to separate the elements of the software, and you'll see this when it comes out, guys, but I tried to highlight as much of it that is IX compared to what you get with TrueNAS. So like in the plugin center, the kind of different drop downs there for community versus IX recommended. And if you've got any issues, the direct form of contact there in the section there. But you mentioned noise, intriguingly, and again, it shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone that the system's running right here, fully populated with WD Reds, a couple of SSDs, bring the mic over there. That's going to be running throughout this whole video, and I can barely hear it, and I'm next to it. So I'll be interested how much of that is actually making it through to the live stream there. So, fair play to you on the noise front. It is not a noisy system at all. So again, well done introducing that into the conversation. Well done. Back to the question. This was a question from YouTube. Again, I've only got an acronym YT next to it, so unless Taika Waititi has put this question here. Does TrueNAS, or indeed IX Systems, why not, have mobile apps?
The answer is that right now, no. We basically run as an open system, and so that means there are a lot of apps that you can get that plug in and use standard interfaces like SMB or WebDAV, etc., and access the system. You can also use mobile browsers to get access to the system and run it from the UI, both from the in-system UI, also the TrueCommand UI. So so everything is possible from a mobile system, but we don't build our own mobile apps. Our goal is to work with the mobile apps that already exist.
Good. I was going to say, you mentioned TrueCommand there. That was another thing that I was really impressed by, that kind of overseeing thing. And again, that might be something I'll touch on the channel at a later date, but that's quite an intriguing kind of bubble. That's a big step forward from what I understood about TrueNAS. So I'm really excited by that, sort of digging my fingers into that one there. Anyway, next question. Push on. No more divergences. Come on track. Next, this is again from Facebook. Does TrueNAS have any preset minimums in place regarding, for example, updates to the system? If left unaddressed, will inhibit the system in any way, such as remote access, application support, etc.
Yep. So there's no magic there. If you don't have enough resources, then not everything can run. So what we'll do is, for example, we'll stop an update happening if we don't have enough room left on the boot drive to load a new system, the new software version or something like that. Similarly, if you've got not enough memory, we won't load another VM in the system. So we have to stop people from effectively ruining their systems, and so we put in the safeguards to make sure that's there.
Do you know what? And I'm going to go on another tangent. Welcome to me. When it comes to a lot when I was playing and tinkering with some of the systems there, and I wanted to just see, for want of a better word, how idiot-proof the system can be. No comments. And when I was looking at certain things where I was trying to force the system to do things, in the rare occasions it would let me force myself to perform certain actions or create certain unsecure environments, it really stuck up the barriers in a defensive manner. And the same went for the memory as well. When I went into the virtual machine field, when I was trying to create some nice areas of sandbox to play with there in terms of virtual environments, it did kind of really go, whoa, are you absolutely sure you want to do this really stupid thing? Which was nice to see. I wish there were elements of my life that would come up more often, but never mind. We've got another question.
There was actually a funny thing on a forum recently. Someone had effectively 4 gigabytes on their system left or something like that, and they tried to load a 3.5 gigabyte file, and the system said, no, you can't do it. And the user said, oh, but I should be able to. There's 4 gigabytes left. And the answer is that if you loaded 3.5 gigabyte, the system would be too full and would start to not perform well. And so we effectively we prevent people from putting their system into a position that it won't perform well.
I was going to say, I have no idea what that noise is. I think someone's trying to break in. I apologise if that's coming through the mic too heavily there. Should we press on anyway?
Sure.
I don't know what that is. It's 5 o'clock. We're British. We should be at tea time. Anyway, next question from Facebook. Nice one. This is regarding testing. And do you know what? This was a question I had when I asked another NAS brand, in fact. That's an irritating noise, isn't it? Aside from smart and single drive benchmarks, does TrueNAS have more or better self-testing benchmarks built into it? For example, the means to measure internal performance on, say, a RAID. So not just single drive testing, but to the ability to test the whole storage pool and its performance.
Yeah. So first of all, we don't have RAID. We don't call it RAID. It's RAID Z.
Oh, of course.
And mirroring, etc. But what we have is a built-in tool called FIO, which is a sort of a very good professional grade performance testing tool. And we generally recommend that rather than using things like DD and trying to copy drives, etc. A lot of the other tools have their own performance limitations, which are pretty annoying. So FIO is better and it gives you a lot more control, and then you can let people know exactly how you performance tested something and therefore what results you got and how you got them.
Again, when I was looking at kind of testing the performance when it comes to most NAS systems, when I do kind of testing and benchmarks online for them, generally a 10G system, I'm overly reliant on the external connection. So it's nice that there's at least that facility internally. You can, mock some things up using SSH and kind of open the doors to things. Yep. But it's better to have that internal of the system because you get a good measure of the hardware as well in conjunction with it. Anyway, next question. So again, this can apply more to IX, I think, more than TrueNAS in general, being a custom platform. And I'll be honest, that noise may end one day. It makes me wish I missed the seagulls. But for most users, what is the hardware entry point for a home user to start using TrueNAS? Maybe more towards IX systems than anything?
Sure. Obviously, people can build their own systems, and for very low entry point, the best thing to do is go on eBay or equivalent and buy a secondhand server and do things that way. For IX hardware, we use the Mini E. The Mini E is a 4-bay system with 4 1 gig ports. For the more small business type things, in the Mini X Plus that we provided you to review is a great vehicle. It's got 2 10 gig ports and 5 bays plus 2 SSD bays, so you can effectively put all the caching you need as well as the hard drives. So with the we're about to release 18 terabyte drives, so with that you can get 90 terabytes of capacity in a very small whisper quiet 5-bay system.
I was going to say, when I was setting the device up and the little bays at the bottom, I didn't even realise it had them before you guys sent the unit there. I thought I was going for one of the ones that didn't have it. So that was quite a pleasant little surprise there at the end. But yeah, I'll be honest, we're just going to keep pushing through that noise, to be perfectly honest. I have no idea what it is. Some kind of building works, who knows? But no, so carrying, I think, more on that hardware architecture side of things, what are the benefits of using kind of a TrueNAS setup build there, IX or otherwise, compared with utilising an off-the-shelf system, like a DS920 here, probably one of the most popular off-the-shelf systems that I talk about on the channel, knocking around for about 500-600 quid. I think again it changes depending on the tax and the price. But what are the benefits from going for, say, an IX or just a TrueNAS system in general instead?
Sure. Yeah, no, the Synology and QNAP, but Synology in particular, does a very nice job of making small, compact hardware. They're a Taiwanese electronics company, so they can go build these systems themselves. Obviously, people are attracted to lower price, and so they try and cut all the costs out of the system to get that price down. So with a system like that, I think the price you're talking about, you get 4 gigabyte of RAM. It's not ECC protected. It's using, as you say, a Celeron type processor. So they really cut the cost down, which is good for them, but that's what they're doing. They then, from a software point of view, don't use ZFS. They effectively use a software file system called BTRFs or ButterFS, and they put it on a RAID 5 system internally, and it gives you the concept of snapshots, etc., but it's not nearly as robust as the ZFS file system. And so we're very focused on making sure we deliver a very quality experience that people can put their prized photos and family videos, etc., on and preserve for generations potentially. And so we're very focused on that quality and preservation of data. And so we don't do some of the things that Synology is prepared to do. But yet it does mean the cost is a bit higher for a new system.
I think, again, one of the things I'm working on at the moment is about 40% complete. It's Synology versus TrueNAS. And again, a lot of what you've discussed there, I do talk about. I'm not going to go into too much detail here because one, it will ruin the video, and two, that horrible noise has stopped. So I think we should take advantage of the silence. But no, that is something I do drill into quite a lot in that comparison as well, particularly because of the architecture and the layers as well, because there's so much to that. But next, okay, so in your pre-populated systems, obviously I know for this system, but with your pre-populated IX NASs, what are, with the drives that you use, predominantly what are the ones that you use, and how does that kind of sit within the warranty of the product?
Sure. So it's we use the WD Western Digital Red Plus drives in those TrueNAS minis. We use other drives in higher end systems, sort of larger professional systems, etc. But for all the minis, that's what we're using. And we use them for two reasons. One is they're very reliable, so we've had very good experience with those particular drives. And the second is they're very low power. And low power on the drives is the only way that we can then also deliver low noise within the system. So that quietness comes from the fact that we know that the power, both of the processor and the drives, is very low, and that the drives are very reliable. So that's our goal. And so we're very proud of the relationship we built with WD over the years, and they've helped us with marketing of TrueNAS, as well as delivering very high quality systems to our enterprise customers.
With this system here, again, the temptation I have right now to open this door and pop out one of those drives, because I know resilvering is a thing here. So I'm very tempted just to show it. I'm not going to, sure. But yes, this is populated with WD Red Pluses, I believe. Yep. So again, when it arrived, straight away, low noise, so good. But yes, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's going to sit when we utilize, if I was to test other bigger drives. But yep, that's a question for another day. Next up, this comes from Twitter, and I'll be completely straight with you. I understood about 40% of this question. Oh, the noise is back. With TrueNAS Scale, will RDMA or ROCEV2 be supported?
The answer is yes, but not yet. So RDMA technology is very useful for large sort of technical computing systems that are effectively accessing a storage system and keeping latency down and trying to improve CPU efficiency. So it's a very enterprise type feature, not the sort of thing that you put in a mini or a small system like that. But yeah, we see it as got some value in the longer term, but it's not something which will be made critical for the first release of the product.
Good. I'm glad you understood that question. I had to do some research after that, but I thought, you know what? I had to put my hand up and admit at the time when I read it, I wasn't 100% on terms with the memory there. Next up, this question again comes from YouTube. Do IX systems and or TrueNAS adequately support flash server use? And if so, does it have intelligent wear monitoring built in?
Okay. The answer is yes. So those that mini that you've got there that has 5 3.5-inch bays and 2 2.5-inch bays can actually be used for all SSDs. So you can populate all of those drives with SSDs and run them as a standard NAS system, and it will perform very well, in particular for workloads that need smaller IOs. Hard drives are very good for streaming IOs or multimedia content, etc. But getting to the flash, wear monitoring is something that people have to do in some systems for flash, because they've got to work out that whether an SSD is being more used one SSD is being more utilized than another, and therefore it's getting worn out more quickly. The benefits of ZFS is that you don't have to do that. ZFS automatically distributes the wear across all of the SSDs in the system. And it does one other thing, which is very important for drives, which is that when you write a small 4K file or some sort of small I/O if you're using iSCSI, it doesn't write that 4K directly to the system. What it does is it aggregates multiple 4K writes into one bigger transaction, which then gets written to the flash. And so what that does is considerably reduces the wear on the drives. So what we find is in real life, we almost never have problems with SSD wear in our TrueNAS systems.
So it's all kind of already built into it. That's quite handy. I'll be honest, when it came to utilizing that question, I was looking at a lot of dedicated flash systems to start with, and that always seems to be like their big shouting topic, obviously because of the lifespan of SSDs in general. But no, that's really good that that's already built into the exchange to start with. Next up, how migratable is TrueNAS? This is quite an intriguing point when it comes to how migratable a RAID array, an existing RAID array is, because a lot of people quite like that in NAS. So for example, if you're running like an i5 16 gig kind of custom built TrueNAS system, and you've already got your big, your big RAID configuration there within that, your big array, how easy and how transferable is that to another system?
Sure.
Do you have to, do you have to basically mirror the same hardware configuration, or can you get away with not doing that?
No, you don't. The big thing is you use the term RAID, and when most people talk about RAID, they're really thinking there's a RAID controller in the system, and there's a hardware and there's a dedicated algorithm. We don't use RAID, we use RAID-Z, and it's built into ZFS, and that means it's all software defined. So there's no hardware associated with all of the layout of the function. It's all the ZFS file system. And so the beauty of ZFS is it is portable. You can take the drives out of that system and the mini there, and I can put them in a 1,000 bay rack level system, and it will be able to import the pool and import the data and make it all available via that huge system. Or I can put those drives and put them into a VMware host and get an Ubuntu VM running on ESXi, and I can also read all the data through ZFS. And ZFS will automatically work out which drive is which and work out where the data should be, where the data is, and import the pool. So that's the beauty of ZFS, is that portability. And it's not like you do this every day, but if you are building systems every 4 or 5 years, you're going to have to migrate your data somewhere to the next system that you're going to do, and it might be bigger than the previous one, or it might be software rather than hardware. So ZFS helps you with that migration every time you have to make that migration effort. And there's 2 ways it does it. One is you can move the drives, and the other is you can replicate data sets or a pool with ZFS replication. And ZFS replication has the benefit of being continuous and incremental, and so you can effectively set up a second copy of your data so that you can turn off the first copy whenever you need to.
See, again, that's really good to hear, because I think a lot of people that have purchased NASs a few years ago, one of the biggest selling points going around at that time at the kind of the higher than SMB level was the idea that you could chop and change the system later and keep moving that. And then occasionally you'd maybe swap the drives out at some point. But I think a lot of people realized that you couldn't really go down the ladder anymore. You had to just keep going upwards with the hardware. So it was kind of like, oh, I've got this great system, and now there's no way back. So again, that's quite nice to hear that you've got that element of flexibility to pursue it in different ways, particularly sort of mounting them in another access point. Anyway, next question. This question came through 2 different forms. I picked the better one that came through Facebook. So, does TrueNAS have an active homebrew scene?
Yep. Very much so. So the best place to go to is our community forums on TrueNAS.com. But it's got a lot of users. We have about 200,000 people that are registered and active in our community. So within that community, they do a bunch of different things. They discuss builds, so they can build their own homebrew servers, and so we support that. We don't get any money from it, but we support it. We want people to experiment. It increases our knowledge of the technologies and make sure our software quality is better. So they're doing that. We have some people who are actually assisting with software development, and so they get involved in the code. All our code is available through GitHub, so you can read it, you can review it, and if you really want to contribute to it, you can contribute to it. We have some people that do that, and we're very grateful for that. And then third is people build apps. So you were talking about plugins on TrueNAS Core, and so people help by putting together plugins for TrueNAS Core. And in the new version of TrueNAS Scale, which is a Linux-based version of TrueNAS, they can use Docker containers, they can build applications there. And so we have community members that focus on that. And then they provide great how-to documentation, because working all this stuff out yourself is difficult for everyone, even if you are expert. So having someone else who's gone through the process and documented exactly what they did and what their issues were and how they resolved them is fantastically useful. So very active scene, and it's good to read about, and it's great when people contribute.
I'll be honest, I have a question coming up about community, but I'm going to hold on to that one. Next question. So, do you know what? You said two words there many times in the previous question, but I think in the grand scheme of things, here's a question. This is another one from YouTube. In the grand scheme of things, what are the actual benefits to the end user of an open source NAS? Why should they be so excited about an open source system?
Yep. So I think Linux has proven that open source has enormous legs in the long term, and the benefit of it is that people can develop things and they can contribute, etc., and it all gets preserved. You're not don't get wiped out with the next release of that software. In an open source NAS environment, the key thing is that the NAS is not as important as your data. Your data is very important to you. Everyone wants to go through and look at old photos and old videos, and if they're running a business, they need to have their data available for various regulatory reasons and other reasons. So your data is very important. When you get an open source NAS, what you're really getting is the power and the control of all your own data. So you can move that data to another system that is completely different hardware. You can replicate it, you can back it up, etc. And you know that it's all, you're able to do that. You're not locked into the TrueNAS Mini that you just have there on your desk there. So controlling your own destiny, and from a community point of view, it means that this thing is long-lived. So effectively, we started the FreeNAS thing back in about 2007, and it's keeping on going. It keeps on growing, and so by growing, it means more people invest in the development, and there are more features, etc. So that it's a very organic growth system, which in the end means there's more value and more capabilities that every user gets to manage their data.
I'll be honest, I'm half expecting a worker to just come through the ceiling there. The whole building shaking right now. I'm really looking forward to finding out what that is. But we're down to our last question now. And again, kind of like the open source question, but I do think it kind of hits at one of the biggest spoken words about TrueNAS in general. We hear a lot about community support, and there's an active community, and it's a big community platform. How exactly does the TrueNAS community help a brand new user making their way onto this new platform?
The community is a fantastic resource for those users. Everyone has a learning curve to go through about managing data. And so it's one thing about how to plug in the box and turn it on and see it's working, but people also need to think about how they're managing their data, how they're setting up applications, how are they effectively becoming IT administrators. It's maybe they're doing it for their home and family, but there's still an IT admin in that type of role. And you learn from people who've done it before. And people who have experience. So the community is really there to help people build systems, manage their data, come up with strategies, work out how to deploy new applications that help people, etc. And that's the sort of what you're getting from that TrueNAS community. And we're very proud of our community. It's got a lot of expertise. Because people use secondhand servers and do things on the cheap, etc., they actually have to have a lot of skill. And that skill gets translated into a better community experience and more knowledge when you ask another question, which is how do you set up an application, or how do you solve some particularly thorny data management problem.
I think a lot of us can definitely vibe with this idea, particularly for those that have ever built a PC ourselves and the like, that kind of knowledge you pick up organically. I imagine the kind of historical users of FreeNAS, TrueNAS, FreeBSD, whatever you want to call it, that community of knowledge, it's nice to have that there. Even when I was doing my review and I had questions I didn't have the answer to, I've got to say that this is the TrueNAS Reddit is one of the nicest Reddits I've used. And let's face it, Reddit can be a flame pit. So, if that is even a small indication of the community there, I think that's a good vibe for your brand there. I'd love to say there's another question, but that is the last question, at least for this Q&A. I'm sure there'll be another one. Maybe it'll be the question, what is happening on your roof? I don't know.
Exactly.
But I mean, ultimately, those are the questions. If you do have further questions, everyone, whether it's here on the TrueNAS channel or over on my own channel, NAS Compares, go into the comments, because it would be great to do this again. And I'm sure we've only scratched the surface of really. I mean, again, thank you so much for today, Morgan. Some great stuff we've covered today, I've got to say. And I am looking forward again to sort of showing off this system, what it can do, arguably what it can't do in some places, and how it compares with some of the turnkey off-the-shelf solutions from, the NAS brands that I generally talk about. But yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for today.
Thanks, Robbie. Really appreciate talking to you. It's great that to talk to someone who's so interested in managing data and how people do it. So very keen to talk to you, and also get to know the UK community as well, that very much follows you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll be honest, that was full of compliments. That was lovely. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest, I don't know how to turn your YouTube channel off. So, well, hopefully someone will turn it off for us. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Do let us know in the comments if you've enjoyed this. Again, I'm going to go up on the roof with a hammer and find out who has been making that noise and hopefully put a stop to it. We're going to find out what's happening with that one. But otherwise, I think we're going to get taken off shortly.
Well, thanks, Robbie. Thanks, Morgan. As always, we appreciate having these discussions for the community to learn more about our technology, which we talk about data freedom. That's our purpose in the world, is to provide that data freedom. And for that, we're happy that you took us through that. We're an open source company, so we at IX rely on referrals from those in the community. I know you, Robbie, have folks that will have an interest in our technology. And we appreciate you sharing what you know with others who store data, because at IX, we welcome everybody to data freedom with TrueNAS. Thanks a lot, Robbie. Thanks a lot, Morgan. We'll see you all next time.